Hello, 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 and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle to triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Her Version. We have had over 400 women grace this stage, and we love every single one of them. For those of you that are already jumping on live, make sure that you are hitting that share button. The more eyes and the more ears on this content, the better for the world in general. We always have brilliant speakers on, brilliant guests on that have so much to share and so much goodness inside of them. These are always filled with so much value. So we would so appreciate that. The Her Version platform is built on storytelling and the understanding that many times our greatest learning experiences come from listening to other people's stories. So today I'm speaking with an amazing woman named Katie Benway. Katie is a psychic medium, certified life coach, teacher, and author. She is a natural psychic and medium experiencing the effects of these intuitive connections beginning in very early childhood. For more than 12 years, Katie has used her psychic and mediumship abilities along with her professional training and innate skill as a life coach to provide insight, clarity, guidance, and healing to individuals and groups. As a speaker, teacher, and coach, Katie has presented to a variety of groups, large and small, on topics including intuition, conscious parenting, past lives, and self-trust. So excited to have her join us today. Welcome, lady.
Hello, it's great to see you. How are you?
I'm doing so good, and I'm so excited to have you here. I know our very first conversation was so much fun, and it's always interesting when I have these first conversations because it's like the first conversation could go for 6 hours, and then you're like, wait a minute, we can't talk about all the things. We have to save some of the things for the podcast. So you were one of those people. So I'm so excited to kind of, share some more time with you and really kind of dive into your journey and your story and all the awesome things that you are doing now in your world.
Great. I'm so excited to share.
Yes. So as I said, this podcast is based around storytelling. We love to hear stories and journeys. So I'd love to kind of just open the floor to you to be able to share, a past challenge, a pivot that you had in your life, what that looked like in order to get you to where you are now, and what you kind of learned from that experience.
Sure. So as you know from my bio, I am a psychic, a medium, intuitive, and was really just born this way. And so, like so many of us, just learned how to sort of live in the world and keep that part of me separate, or only sort of unpack it and take it out maybe in friendships or with a close girlfriend. And so for a long time, I just had this kind of traditional life. And it was in my mid to late 20s that this truth of who I am, deeply spiritual, deeply connected, really was wanting to come out and not just be expressed, but sort of take over and sort of be the current, the guidepost of my life. And so it wasn't until my mid 20s that I said out loud to somebody, I know things I shouldn't know. I see dead people. And it was a best friend. And it was terrifying. And really, when I began on my own spiritual journey, it was just for me, never set out to create a business or really even do anything. I hadn't conceived of doing anything of service in the world. It was just about understanding who I was. But I knew that I felt incomplete. I felt not whole. I felt inauthentic. I felt like I was pretending in the real world. Like I could put on sort of Katie makeup and go be smart and make people happy and hit the ball out of the park. But it just felt so incongruent. And so I spent a lot of years just sort of privately and quietly doing my own healing work on my own spiritual journey. And then it became clear that this is the work that I'm meant to do in the world. It's who I'm meant to show up as. And frankly, that was really daunting and really terrifying. Partly because there's all sorts of people in the world who wouldn't believe what I do. Also, past life wise, how many of us women have just been burned at the stake for this sort of thing? So, I think I had all of those forces sort of coming up in me, those self-preservation forces saying, nope, don't do this. Don't be honest. Don't go out there and be honest about who you are. Don't show up that way. It's not safe to. And it took some time. It took a while. But I did. And 13 years ago was when I started doing this work on the world and started owning and claiming who I am and showing up this way. And it's been rewarding. I am absolutely categorically the most authentic version of myself. And I absolutely categorically have a ways to go. And for me, and this, I'm writing my second book, and this is what the second book will be about. This is about self-awareness, admitting deep and profound truth about yourself to yourself, because you can lie to everyone but yourself. And then paired with that self-awareness and that, telling yourself of the truth, there comes these moments in life when you are asked to embody spiritual courage. And you're asked to take leaps of faith, make plans, let things go, release things that feel safe, in honor of something that's not yet, that hasn't come to fruition, that is still unseen. And I feel deeply that the life I've led is literally me walking my talk, and was my soul and the universe conspiring to teach me about reckoning with deep truth and having the spiritual courage to live that truth. Sabrina, I'm super sorry. I can't hear you.
Thank you for that. There was a loud bird in the background.
That's perfect.
Singing its heart out. So I had to choose. Which one do I want?
Nature and I are like this.
So I love how you were talking about the book that you are working on right now, and how really recognizing that you still have a ways to go. I love it when I speak to coaches, mentors, teachers who are real in the arena of still learning. There's so many times as teachers and coaches, we have this thought process that we have to know all the things, and there can't be any holes in our learnings in order for us to step up as a teacher, as a mentor. And I just love this concept of you saying, I still have a ways to go. What does that mean for you?
Yeah. So one of the things about my work, and I deeply mean this, I've worked with tens of thousands of people. I've heard tens of thousands of stories from people literally all over the globe. And nothing is more humbling than healing other human stories. Number one, humans are not that unique. My struggles and my journey and my trauma isn't actually that unique. Not when I listen to everybody's stories. That doesn't mean I don't honor it as unique. That doesn't mean I don't honor it as fundamentally shaping my life and something that I have to reckon with. But my work has allowed me to sort of move outside the ego of I'm special or unique, or I have something that someone doesn't, because I just get to listen to people and hear people. And there's this simultaneous awareness of honoring an individual's journey, and then having that humility of knowing that though every experience is unique and shapes you, it also doesn't make you bigger or better than someone else. And so I've really deeply believed that. I think the other piece of it is like, I'm just such a diehard self-improvement, self-awareness junkie. And I never stop meeting coaches that I want to work with. And I never stop hearing content creators whose ideas blow me away. And I really value being in process. I believe personally that we are each a soul. I'm a soul and a human body here on this planet to expand and grow. And if I'm not involved in that march of expansion, then I'm stuck, then I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing here. So I love that. I always say, like, I hope my work doesn't stop blowing my mind. I hope the work I do with people doesn't stop blowing me away, doesn't stop at times stopping me in my tracks. I love not being the smartest person in the room. It makes my life better when I'm a listener too.
Fantastic. I have a question.
Yeah.
So I have heard from individuals who stand in the arena of intuitiveness. I don't know if that's a word. And I've heard multiple times that we all have this power. We all have the ability to do what you do. What's your thought process on that?
Yeah, so I agree. I often will say, especially to like newer clients or new audiences, I don't have something that you don't. I am not something that you are not. So because people get really nervous about intuition, and that does keep us kind of separate from it, or I think can make the voice sound more muffled. So I always try to lead with that. I do believe that on a soul level, I agreed to be a human being on the planet at this time with a certain level of access so that I can help people. So you have access, you know, the next person has access. I think that my role on the planet this go round is to probably have a lot of access that helps me help people learn about themselves, walk through the darker parts of life, walk through life's transformations, and come out the other side. But I deeply believe that I must, and I think I do, embody an alignment with intuition and alignment with self that should inspire my clients, should inspire the people I work with, and should inherently teach people that they too can look within. The other thing I just say to people a lot in sessions is, I shouldn't actually tell you anything you don't already know. So often people say to me, Katie, I knew this, this just confirms it. Or I had this instinct or inkling, but hearing you say it out loud really helps me. And I do believe that's my role. I sort of paint the bigger picture or pull in other details. But if I'm saying something to you that doesn't on any level resonate, you should question it. You should question it. I'm not more powerful than you are, or a client is, or someone in my audience is. Your power rests with you and your own voice.
Yeah. When you mentioned your story about sitting with a friend and, you know, I don't know if you actually said, I see dead people. Or,
I did, yes.
Oh, okay.
And cried.
Where were you? What was the turning point? What caused you to finally recognize and step into that? Was it a book? Was it a video? Was it something you read on the mirror of a bathroom? Like, what was that push? Was it just the atmosphere you were in? What was that push to get you to finally feel it, know it, but then step into it in the real world?
So my answer to that is kind of funny. It's not actually humorous when I was living through it. Now it is. But I think, like most things, when there's a truth within us that wants to be acknowledged, that wants to be expressed, it will ooze out of us, right? So whether that's unconscious behavior, whether that's acting out, whether that's projecting, whatever that is, it comes out. So mine came out in my sleep. And for my whole life, I had nightmares, and I would walk in my sleep and talk, and I was a hot mess in my sleep. My husband at the time would come home late from work and say I'd be standing in the corner of the room, like talking to people, telling people to go to the light. And frankly, my sleep was incredibly disrupted. I'd been through all these sleep studies. They never found anything neurologically wrong with me. They couldn't explain me, except I had every sleep disorder under the umbrella of walking and talking. And so I had gone for a sleep study, and once again, they found nothing wrong with me. And I was in a conversation with a best friend who was incredibly intuitive. She's a tarot card reader and astrologer based out of Boston. And I just said, this is what I think is happening, and I don't know what to do with it. And that conversation was, I remember where I was sitting. We were on the phone. The wall in front of me was painted red. I was sitting at a desk. I remember what I was wearing. I remember what she said. I still have the notes I took. And basically what we came to was like this, it's sort of like a river current. And if you don't let the river run where it's supposed to run, it'll come out somehow. And so looking back, knowing what I know now, you know, almost 20 years later, you know, I have an access to the other side. And I think that folks from the other side were coming to me because they wanted help. They wanted their loved ones to receive help. But I wasn't open to it in my waking life. I wasn't acknowledging it. And so it was happening in my sleep, which is where your consciousness is sort of like here and there. And I remember the day that I decided, I feel like I accepted the mission to do this and be this. And it was like 5:30 in the morning. I was reading a powerful book. I had read a passage. I started crying, but it wasn't emotional. There was no emotion attached. It was just like a release. And through the tears, I said, okay, I'll help. I'll do what I'm supposed to do on the planet. I'll help. And then afterwards I said, but you have to let me sleep. And so since then, it's been so much better. My sleep is so much better. I still definitely walk and talk in my sleep, but it's certainly not as disrupted as it was. But essentially, like, this truth came for me. My path came for me, like it does for you, like it does for every single one of us. It's just sort of a matter of like what confluence of life events are created to pull it out of you. And how long does it take for you to get on your knees and release everything and say, all right, there's nothing more to do but follow the river current.
Wow. So as far as stepping into this, what was the learnings or the education or the connection that you had to do yourself to really pull this together, to use this to help people?
Yeah. So when I started doing readings, just sort of classic readings for people, that part was easy for me. People say to me like, oh, is it hard to be psychic? And I say, no, it's hard not to be. It's just my truest way of operating is just being really connected and in tune. It's harder for me to kind of be on the planet and in this life and, you know, be boxed up. So doing readings for people wasn't actually difficult. One of the big turning points, though, and I really honor this woman, I was doing a reading for a woman whose husband had passed and like had died suddenly of a heart attack. And at that time, I didn't have an office. And so we were meeting like in a small cafe in a corner. And she was sobbing and she was comfortable, but I felt, frankly, terrible because she needed more privacy. And that was what prompted me to get office space. But bigger and aside from that, when I work with people, I'm listening to their deepest knowings, their deepest truths, their deepest secrets. People tell me things they don't tell anyone else. And there's a profound responsibility in that. And then to walk with people and lead people through some kind of process is an equally profound responsibility. And so as I was creating like physical space, right, an office, a comfortable space, a comfortable couch, a white noise machine, etc., I realized that I needed some additional training and some additional capacity building as someone who was going to walk with these people. And that's what prompted me. I went to the graduate school at the University of New Hampshire and became a certified life coach. And what I loved about that was, you know, I'm not a clinician, I'm not a therapist, I'm a container holder for someone to arrive at profound truths about themselves safely and to wrestle with, reckon with, and then integrate those truths. And I felt like that life coach container really helped me. I learned a lot of great stuff. It helped give people more confidence in who I was. And it gave me the language to really frame for people. I'm not here to do your work for you. I'm not here to be your guru or collect your power. I'm simply here to walk alongside you and hold a container. Your power rests with you. My tagline is come home to yourself. And I'm just your fellow journeyer on that. So that I've always been really aware of that in that container and that responsibility. And it's also why I am steadfastly committed to doing my own work. I have like three coaches in rotation at any given time, because the clearer I am, the better I am at my work. And I've got to own my stuff and keep moving and be the best kind of channel and guide I can be.
Absolutely. When you say, I was reading somewhere in your stuff, it was curiosity to crisis. What does that mean?
Yeah. So I think you're probably looking at my website. So my tagline is come home to yourself. And I always say that I can work with anyone, whether they're simply curious about living from the soul or in crisis. And the other reason sort of I pull those two words in is this. I believe that without curiosity, we're dead in the water. As a human being, like if you're not curious, that's a big problem. It just is. And so I really value and honor and want to celebrate curiosity. And I have so many people come to me and say, I'm not in crisis, I'm just really curious, or I have a nagging. And the thing that happens when we're curious is we often don't tell people about our curiosities because we're afraid we're not experts yet, or we haven't figured it out, or we look stupid, or we feel ashamed. But having that space where someone's just allowed to, come into my world professionally and say, I'm just curious. That's really important for me to invite those people in, because curiosity is often how our soul leads us. It's how the universe teaches us. And then, of course, on the other end of that is crisis. And I meet all sorts of people through crisis. Many clients I have met because of a death. And crisis is one of life's greatest givens. And that we will die and come back to life many times in our life is a truth. And so that's also a, real core value of mine, that it's okay to be in crisis. It's okay to not know. It's okay to be a mess. And I can walk with you through that.
I love this concept of curiosity, and it's one of the pillars in my world as far as being, I don't want to say being okay, because that's so mundane, but being ecstatic about it, because it's one of the things, I was raised, well, I don't know if you know this, but I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. Okay, cool. Raised as a Jehovah's Witness. And in that realm of religion or sect, there is not a lot of curiosity, asking questions and being curious about why certain things and what certain things and all of the stories is like a huge no-no. So really recognizing through my story how curiosity was like pushed down so much. And then, as I've stepped into this role over the last decade of who I am, and really getting excited about areas that I don't know, speaking to individuals like you on things that I'm like, wow, this is so interesting. This is so awesome. And then really recognizing that we as humans, we're allowed to open our world to new ideas. We're allowed to take what resonates with us at that time, and then we're allowed to leave the rest. And I think that having that as a process that we can use as humans, and being okay with that, is one of the most important things as far as developing mentally and emotionally, more so than the latter.
Yes.
Curiosity.
Yes. Well, and I would even say, and you shared with me your experience in the Jehovah's Witness faith. And I've worked with a lot of people, women especially, who have left really intense religious structures or systems. And even aside from religion, patriarchy, family systems, etc. I mean, I think one of the greatest challenges we have is that we as humans are steeped in systems that separate us from like our truest spiritual nature. And one of those is when we are part of systems where curiosity and truth are not allowed. So we all know family systems, some of us grew up in them, where curiosity isn't allowed, truth is not allowed, religious systems, structural education, patriarchy, all the things. And I just deeply believe that when you separate someone from their own truth or their inner drive to find their truth, so when you take away someone's permission to be curious, you are separating them from their spirit. And it effectively disempowers and keeps people down.
Yep.
And it's a big part of like what I do in my work. It's why I'm so honest about who I am. I'm not bigger and better. Like, I don't want your power. On any given day, I'm a hot mess and need a coach on the line. But we have to embrace our curiosity. We have to know that our search for truth is valid and right. And if there's a system or a voice in your world that's telling you it's not, I invite you to question it. Because I think those are the things that take us from our power, take us from our spiritual truth, take us from like our life force. And that's damaging stuff. It's way less hurtful to be in a process of confusion and unknown and following truth and curiosity and feeling upended. That's like good, even though painful. That's really good. It's far more painful to be in a space where you have to disavow the unseen, deeply spiritual part of yourself in order to, have human safety and inclusion.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Shannon wrote something really interesting here. If you want to read this out loud.
Sure. Curiosity is so fun. It allows me to release control, embarrassment, and such. Love that you pinpoint that. It's such a great starting point. Do I want to learn more or not? Yeah. And like my take on that, especially just because I'm like intuitive and talk about the soul and intuition, is I think that when you kind of get that hit, that curious hit, it is important to consider, does this resonate with me? And for some of us, I always sort of point down here, my intuition is in like my stomach. And it always feels like a gravitational force. So it doesn't really, to me, mine doesn't really feel like butterflies necessarily. Sometimes I get chills, but if it's right and true for me, it feels like a gravitational force. It feels like something I can't ignore. And so I always encourage people, like, check in and tap in. Like, if something is connecting with you and it doesn't go away, or it's nagging at you, or you're thinking about it, like, where in your body is this hitting? Where in your intuition is this hitting? And for some people, it is a butterfly feeling or chills up their spine. But that's how you know. And one of the things I actually really wanted to say today, and thank you, Sharon, this gives me an opportunity, is that the universe, our soul, unseen forces want to build conversational relationships with us. And so it isn't just that we'll get the full picture immediately. It can feel breadcrumby, not like some, bad boyfriend who's not giving you the attention you need. But it can feel like the universe is sort of in conversation. And so you see the cardinal land on your deck, or you see the license plate with the numbers, or an ad in your social media feed, or someone says something to you that's profound. But when you start acknowledging the small little bits in yourself, the world starts talking back. That's the language of the soul. It's the language of the universe. And I think curiosity is a way we tap into that, and we can honor and verify that and get into that conversation with these loving unseen forces around us.
Yeah. What were some, stepping into this role, a lot of times when we're talking about stuff like this, it's like, yeah, and then I stepped in and everything was perfect. And it's really important for everybody that yes and no.
Yes.
So I would love for you to touch a little bit on your own personal journey as far as limiting beliefs that you have had to work on as Katie to be able to fully step into this role that you've been given or that you've accepted.
Yeah. So I really believe that limiting beliefs exist. I believe very much that we carry inside of us a bunch of subconscious stuff that plays itself out until we notice the patterns and we notice the theater. And we stop and say, wait a minute, I have to heal something. So a lot of my conditioning, I would say, coming out of childhood, was around around the danger of being seen, and was around shining too brightly, the danger of shining too brightly. And there were a lot of messages, and then I would say very physical, significant ramifications in my childhood of being seen, shining too brightly. And so for me, I really like folded up my essence, my light, into service to others. So I sort of took my light, my natural, I think, goodness and life force, and I made it about making other people happy. And because I was really intuitive, I was awfully good at that. I'm still very good at that. But it certainly, as a kid, in a very kind of unconscious survival way, making people happy, flagging what was happening around me, reducing threats. And remember, like, threats to a kid can just feel like, I mean, obviously it can be abuse, but it can also just feel like not being understood, being rejected, being abandoned, being cast aside. So I really learned that when I shined authentically, there were ramifications and punishment for that. And so I had better do something constructive with it so that I didn't feel so separate. I think that's the most tactful way I can say some of that. And I'm not being tactful because of other people. I'm being tactful about my own boundaries. But so this has come out a lot in my work, because the more authentic I am, the more effectively I show up for the people I'm writing or teaching or helping. The more honest and clear I am about myself, the clearer my channel gets. I remember when I got my first significant speaking gig, and I was doing like a 2-day speaking gig for a couple hundred people, and I immediately started having nightmares. Oh goodness, how to say this tactfully. I immediately started having nightmares that someone from my family of origin would come into that space and would kill me. Literally, that was the nightmare. This wasn't happening in my waking life. This was the nightmare. And I'm smart enough, I'm experienced enough to know that that's deep and that's subconscious. And so I started working with one of my coaches and said, I got to get this out of my body before I take that stage. Because there was still clearly a part of me that hadn't resolved. Oh my gosh, when I'm seen authentically, I'm in danger. That was what that dream was telling me. And it was like very physical and very real, that dream. And so I did a lot of guided meditation. I did a lot of deep work. I did a lot of processing. It didn't fully go away. And I think that's normal. Like you can't wait until it's gone. You can't wait until it's healed. But I had enough conscious awareness of, there is still a little kid part of Katie. She's 10 years old and she wears pink pants and a purple shirt. And she is terrified. I know who she is. She's terrified that when she's seen, it literally becomes life or death. Like someone's going to come for her. Yeah. And so I did the speaking gig and it went beautifully. And I honored little Katie. And as my best friends know, usually after I get done with a big being seen moment, I have to privately go sob because it healed a part of me, and it did. And so I still work with that to this day. It came up again when I released my first book. I just have to breathe through it. But I have coaches. I have a system. I know what this is about. I don't know if it'll ever go away fully in this lifetime, but I know that I'm aware enough of it and committed to working it through that I'm not going to allow it to prevent me from being who I'm meant to be.
I have like so much I could say.
I know you do.
All of that. But first, I want to bring Shannon back up if you want to read this. I think this is cool.
I love hearing this. It's so confirming, literally. I'm currently reading The Big Leap, which talks about the limiting beliefs or upper limits. Katie, you and I have similar stories for sure. Now I am just starting to step into my natural sensitivities. Also raised a Jehovah's Witness like Sabrina. Oh, Shannon, I'm so proud of you. You know, women, especially those of you who've left these systems that, in my opinion, have attempted to rob you of your life force and your truest essence,
Mhm.
there is a coming back to life process that is grueling and raw and profound. And I have so much respect for it. I've journeyed with women coming through this. And it's the work of a lifetime, but you're meant to do it.
Yeah. So I don't want to at all project my story onto your story. But however, while you were speaking about getting reprimanded or whatever word you used when you were shining brightly, I have a story that resonated, that I can share. Not trying to project that this is at all what you were talking about, but this is just what came up for me. So when I got pregnant at the age of 20, I was banned from the house and had to leave. So leaving my little sister basically, who was 2.5 years younger than me and my brother, but that's not what the story's about. So my sister's 2.5 years younger than me. We were becoming bestest of friends, as sisters sometimes do, right around 18 to 25 years old. All of a sudden you're like, oh, you want to be my friend. So her and I were hanging out all the time at that point and really becoming really close. And when I got disfellowshipped, I had to leave the house. Very soon after her leaving the house, she met someone and she got married. And I ended up in a abusive relationship, and I stayed in that abusive relationship for a lot longer than I would have liked to. And I also didn't shine brightly in areas that I wanted to shine more brightly in, because of my worry of leaving her. And she got married so young, and all of the things that go along with getting married young, having kids young, and just the strife that happens, right? There's strife that happens when you get married at that age. It's just normal. I think it's not perfect, and you think it's going to be perfect, but you can't have sex before marriage. So you end up in these relationships like tied to somebody very young. And I held a lot of guilt myself for not being there for her, for not, holding that space or that void that she had when I left, and then falling into this thing at a young age. And there was a lot of guilt and a lot of heartache that I held for a really long time, as far as if I would have been there for her, she would have been able to be single for a little bit longer and do things a little bit easier, or whatever it was at that point, whatever I was thinking. But that's what kind of came up for me, that, a lot of times we take on this guilt or this shame or this heaviness of not feeling comfortable stepping into who we authentically are at certain areas of our life because of somebody else, because of whatever, guilt or shame, or for me at least, having in that situation, and having to clear that in order to feel comfortable as who I am now, feel comfortable stepping out of that abusive relationship and into my brightness and into my joy, despite where she may or may not be, or where I think she may or may not be, because what I think isn't necessarily even true either.
Right.
So, really juggling that as the older sister, as the older sibling, as the one who's supposed to be the role model and be the one that's supposed to be there for my brother and sister, and just recognizing, like, yes, and I still have to do what I have to do.
Yeah. I really struggle, and I've seen so many people talk about this. I really struggle with this directive we get that we're supposed to be of service and in service to other people. And I just want to be careful, like, this is my belief, but I just don't believe that's what the universe or God, if you're a God person, is asking us to do. Are we meant to be of service? Sure. And if you can't, then do no harm. But we get into being of service in this codependent way that co-ops our power. And then we have all of these humans walking the planet who are just walking trauma reactions and kind of like broken down and not doing what we're here to do, which I believe is do your deepest work and become your own best container for yourself to be authentic and shining brightly. And that is the greatest gift that you can give to people. I know that when my first book came out, my my first dedication in the book is to my 2 sons. And I remember when my older son read the dedication out loud. That's an experience. We were in the car and I just sobbed. I was driving, he was in the back seat. But what I realized was, and this had never, ever occurred to me, and this was not why I wrote a book at all, but it never occurred to me. So Jack is reading the dedication to he and Gus. And it occurred to me that my kids, because I wrote a book, my kids now have explicit permission to write a book. And my grandkids get to invoke their crazy, wild grandmother as the reason they want to write a book. So like what I do, the way that I confidently and steadfastly and bravely and courageously am authentic, gives the people I love permission to do those things too. And so my kids may never write a book, but they get to try something. Or like, God, I hope my granddaughter one day is referencing me when I'm dead and gone because she was going to go do something super ballsy. You know, it's like that legacy. But if I had never like done this stuff and done the work and been courageous and been uncomfortable, you know, I wouldn't be able to give this permission to those who come after me.
Absolutely. Yeah. So powerful. And I love that you're saying that because I've conceptualized that before, but not necessarily verbalized that before.
Yeah.
And absolutely so beautiful as far as breaking the cycle of into or out of are both just as powerful.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that when I look at my kids and the way that they dream and the way that they try, I know I've broken a cycle and there's always work to do, but I just want it to be safe for them to connect with their deepest truths and then like try to live them.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. 100%.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on, we're already running out of time. I can't believe I'm asking you another open-ended question, but we're doing this. What are your thoughts on, you had mentioned, we were talking about limiting beliefs. What is your thoughts on ancestral?
Yeah.
Because I dove into this myself as far as, are these mine or, because they don't feel like mine.
Yes. And in honor of time, I will do this succinctly because it is like its own topic.
Sorry.
There's the past lives and karma topic. Yeah. So yes. I deeply believe, just through my experience of talking with tens of thousands of people, that whatever's not healed before us, and maybe, I guess, I don't know if I would say only what's not held, but there's a psychic mantle that gets passed down from those who came before us. I think the heaviest expression of that mantle is the stuff that's unhealed. And so, yes, does it come down in patterns, thoughts, beliefs, family structures? Yes. But I also think there's like unconscious, psychic, energetic stuff that comes down. I also think there's past life stuff that comes through. And so this is why curiosity is so important, because sometimes something doesn't make sense to your conscious brain, but you have to pull a thread. And it's because it's like some thing that happened with your grandmother who's on the other side, or some past life thing that you're working out. And so, yeah, one of the things I always say to people is like, let's say you have something happen in your world and it triggers a really significant emotional response for you. Like you feel like you fell in the well in the backyard that no one knew was there. Like suddenly you're at the bottom of this well and you're like, what? That's usually a sign that there's like karmic, past life, or some lineage, ancestral stuff going on that's important to be healed.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Good to know. I love this. I could just keep talking to you.
I know. When do we get to do it again?
We'll definitely have to have you on again. And I would love to also get you in one of our, we have an Empower Hour every Monday night, and it would be cool to have you hang out with us and share some of your goodness with us at some point. First, as we're closing up, where can people find you? So we have a ton of people watching live right now. They're obviously hanging on for 44 minutes because they're resonating with what you are saying. Yeah. So where can people find you? And then where do you hang out on social media the most?
Okay, so you can find me at katiebenway.com. which I think is above my head. And on social media, I am on Facebook and Instagram under Intrepid11. That we didn't get into that, but the name of my business is Intrepid, brave, courageous, 11, ELEVEN. So 11 spelled out, not just the number. 11 is about purpose, life purpose, soul purpose. So literally my business name is code for courageously living your life purpose. So Intrepid11 is where you find me on Instagram and Facebook. Yep, except it's not 11 number, it's 11 spelled out. ELEVEN.
Is Intrepid spelled right?
I think so. I'll have to check again.
Oh my God, do I know how to spell 11? Oh my God.
ELEVEN. Intrepid11. Yes, I still have to say it that way. So Instagram and Facebook. I am on Twitter, but I don't know. Twitter is just sort of a mess lately, so I don't post there as much. But Instagram and Facebook, you can definitely find me. I do like ceremonies and workshops and all the things, and so you can find all of that stuff in like my bio and stuff. Hi, Jen Landon.
And what else do I want to ask you?
My book's on Amazon under Katie Benway.
I love it. Why do you do what you do?
Oh, I do what I do because it really is the deepest truth. It really is the deepest part of me. It's the deepest expression of me. And I feel like I have no choice but to just reside in my truth and show up the best way that I can there. Absolutely. And that it helps people is amazing, but me honoring my truth is the reason.
Fantastic. Well, I so love spending time with you and so excited to have you join us again in the future, either here on the podcast or in one of our support groups. So appreciate you taking some time out of your day to sit down, talk with me, and hang out with all of us. For those watching live, thank you so much for hanging out with us. If you could share this video wherever you're watching us at so that we can get some more eyes and some more ears on this awesome content value that Katie gave today. For those of you watching on the replay, if you could hashtag replay wherever you are so that we can also send some love to you. As far as it resonating with any of you, make sure that you check out Katie Benway at katiebenway.com. The link is in the area right above her head area, and then also in the description, there's a clickable link. She hangs out predominantly on Instagram and Facebook under Intrepid11, which is right here. Go ahead and check her out. We love to connect people here on this podcast. Thank you so much, Katie.
Thank you. It was awesome to talk to you.
For hanging out. Thank you for those of you watching live and on the replay. This community is expanding every single day and is filled with females who are striving to do better than they did yesterday. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, follow, like, and share. If you have an amazing story to share, check us out at hernation.life. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I'm so grateful to be here sharing a platform that allows people to share their truth and inspire others as